Good morning. Before we begin the public safety announcement, good morning. Before we begin the public safety announcement we're going to be talking about in a few moments, I want to honor and remember the 12 innocent lives we lost 10 years ago today in the Aurora Theater shooting. A senseless act of violence. Today, all of Colorado mourns with the families, the loved ones, the survivors. It was 10 years ago today. We lost Jonathan Blunk, A.J. Boink, Jesse Childress, Gordon Coden, Jessica Gowie, John Thomas Larimer, Matt McQuinn, Alex Matthew Sullivan, Michaela Medic, Veronica Moser Sullivan, Alex Teves, Rebecca Ann Wingo. I know that for the families, the loss doesn't always become easier with the passage of time, and especially on milestones like this, the loss can seem as fresh and as raw as when it happened. I want the families of those who mourn, the families of those who were injured, those who experienced trauma that day, to know that Colorado will always remember the lives of those lost and the events of 10 years ago in the Aurora Theater shooting. Today we're here to talk about public safety, to talk about fire protection in the state, to talk about how we can improve the protection of property and lives with the increased threat of year-round fires in the state of Colorado. We're joined by our Department of Public Safety Director, Stan Hilke, Department of Natural Resources Director, Dan Gibbs, who himself is a volunteer wildland firefighter, Chief of Fairmont Fire Protection, Alan Fletcher, our host today. Thank you so much for hosting us. We know that, of course, wildfires are natural. They're a natural part of the life cycle of forests and wildlands, but over the course of the last decade, there's been several phenomena that we expect to continue that are increasing the risk of fires to our residents. Those are, of course, increased growth, demographics, development in the wild and urban interface, more usage of our public lands, and tragically, many of our fires are started by human activity, and that should be a reminder to everybody. Only have campfires in permitted areas. Make sure they're fully extinguished when you leave. If you smoke, be very careful what you do with cigarette butts. And of course, a hotter, drier climate. So these factors are contributing to significantly longer and greater risk of fire across Colorado. In fact, 11 of the 20 largest fires in our state's history have occurred in the last 10 years. The 3 largest fires in the history of our state were all in 2020, and tragically the most destructive fire in the entire history of our state was last December, not far from here, the Marshall Fires. So we're always looking for ideas and ways that we can up the bar on fire protection. The state recently purchased our first Firehawk helicopter that we own and can deploy. We also entered leases for this entire fire season for additional strike capacity that Colorado controls. The issue being, it's harder to rely on interstate pools when there can be multiple fire events across the American West. And that's exactly what happened in the summer of 2020. And it's not a question of if, it's a question of when it happens again. How can we make sure that Colorado is ready with the resources that we need? So a couple of weeks ago, I was in Eads, Colorado, meeting with Russ Watson from the Kiowa County Fire Protection District, Weston Mearden, captain of the Eads Fire Department, and Ryan Britton, assistant chief of the Haswell Fire Station, and more. I also met with volunteer firefighters recently in Rico and in other areas of the state. We always get a lot of good ideas. And obviously, first and foremost, there's needs around equipment. There's needs around fire stations. And many of them take time to get done because people know that sometimes government moves a little bit too slow for any of us. And if it involves a fire station, it might mean the legislature needs to appropriate the money, there needs to be a grant process, and then it needs to go out. And so sometimes that could take a year, could take 2 years. Sometimes if at first you don't succeed, you try again. But I was so pleased to hear from Russ Watson, the Kiowa County Fire Protection District Chief, and others. They brought up a very simple real-life problem they had. They said, you know what? We have a lot of state employees in our area, Colorado Department of Transportation. In other areas of the state, it might be Department of Corrections, Department of Public Safety. And some of them either are or want to be volunteer fire departments. And you know what? It's very hard for them to take unpaid time off from their job when they are called up to serve as volunteer firefighters. And I said, you know what, Russ, I think we can fix that one. Now, he probably thought that meant it would take a year, but we got it done in 2 weeks because this is one that was within the prerogative of the governor, and we were able to act on it and get it done. And we were able to craft a policy that very simply gives all of our 31,000 state employees, and I was just talking to the Fairmont folks, they said they're about a half professional and half volunteer. They said they don't currently have any state employees on their volunteer side, but there's certainly a lot of state employees that live in the Golden area and in this district, and I expect that'll be some fertile recruiting grounds because of this new benefits policy. So very simply, this executive order I'm about to sign directs all state agencies and departments, again 31,000 state employees, we're a significant employer in our own right, to have up to 5 days of additional paid leave to serve as volunteer firefighters and first responders across Colorado. And that includes serving as volunteer paramedics, emergency medical technicians, members of search and rescue, and firefighters. This will help support our men and women in the state workforce that want to go above and beyond, that want to put themselves in danger to protect our homes and protect our communities. We also want this to serve as an example to other employers in Colorado, to look at similar policies, to support their workforce taking on this responsibility of fighting fires and saving lives. And I hope that this becomes the norm for every employer in our state, to say, you know what, you might have, you know, your 2 or 3 weeks of paid vacation. We might even make sure that you can take, you know, unpaid leave when duty calls, but we want to go above and beyond that and say, you know what, we're not going to penalize you financially for answering the call of duty to protect our homes, our communities, and keep us safe. We're going to keep you whole for that. After we sign this executive order, the state of Colorado will keep people whole for serving as volunteer firefighters. And I hope that there are many private companies that follow suit and offer similar benefits. This will not only help attract and recruit volunteer firefighters, but it'll also improve the morale of our volunteer firefighters, just knowing that their employer, in this case the state of Colorado, has their back and supports the work that they're doing. We don't want to just say thank you. We want to say thank you. And if you need some additional time off to do that work, we support you in that, because we all benefit. We all benefit from the incredible hard work of our volunteer firefighters across the state. Of course, there's a procedure, as there would be for any employer, if you have a mission critical job that has to be done, that leave could be deferred or changed, but that will happen rarely. That will happen rarely. In almost every case, when you need it, it'll be there, and we've conveyed that to our executive directors of our agencies. And I get it, as other employers are watching this. You know, we know that, you know, employment market is tight, and you might have trouble covering shifts as it is. There's part of the state workforce where, you know, the work is tight, and we need even more people. And by the way, we hope that this also helps attract workers to the state. It's a benefit. So I mean, if you are a volunteer firefighter and you don't have a cooperative employer, certainly consider working for the state of Colorado, because we do support you. But you know, this is something that will help make sure that, not just in word, but in fact and in deed, we have the backs of our firefighters. Of course, you know, the men and women who do volunteer firefighting don't do it to get compensated. They're volunteers. But they shouldn't be financially penalized. for serving as volunteer firefighters. When they step up, dedicate their time, put themselves in harm's way to protect our communities, they need to know that their employer, in this case the state of Colorado, has their back. You know, last week I was in Evergreen celebrating the Colorado Strategic Wildfire Action Program, which is already managing about 49 fire mitigation projects across the state, taking down fuel and trees, involving the Youth Corps, reducing fire risk for communities and for homeowners, clearing trees and brush. We've secured a new Firehawk helicopter, air tanker contract. We passed funding for a new statewide dispatch system. We, as a state, need to be ready for this new normal because of the increased fire risk factors. And we know mitigation efforts have been proven to stop fires, to prevent fires from spreading to additional communities. I've seen it firsthand. It means money saved for homeowners, for businesses. The dispatch system means faster response. Firehawk and air tanker, bigger punch earlier in the control of the state of Colorado, helping firefighters contain flames earlier. And the same goes for this executive order I'm about to sign. With more men and women fighting these fires, with the additional tools Colorado is providing, we have a better chance of being responsive and quick and preventing smaller fires from becoming bigger. Sadly, a year-round fire season is in many ways the new reality for our state. We need to make sure that we also have the very best tools, the very best response system, and support our volunteer firefighters in every way possible, including support from the employer level, which we are doing here today for the employees of the state of Colorado. Thank you, and with that, I want to introduce Colorado's Department of Public Safety Executive Director, Stan Hilke.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you, Governor. I appreciate the opportunity to be here today, and I'm so glad to be standing up here with our career and volunteer firefighters who make up the backbone of the core of our nation's fire service, and they're the ones. All fires start local, and most fires are dealt with locally, and we wouldn't be able to do that without volunteer and career firefighters. I want to talk just a little bit about the importance of this issue with respect to wildland fire. Wildfire does not recognize jurisdictional boundaries. A single wildfire often crosses private, state, tribal, and federal lands and threatens communities all across the landscape. A large wildfire has significant potential to impact millions of lives for those who live, work, and play in Colorado, and for those who rely on Colorado for their water. The number of people at risk of wildfires in Colorado continue to increase. Approximately 2.9 million people live in Colorado's wildland-urban interface now. That's why our volunteer firefighters are critical to the safety of communities. When looking at the full picture, the critical role of volunteers play in our nation's emergency services becomes more and more clear. Many communities depend on volunteers to provide their bulk of emergency services. Our nation's volunteers still make up the bulk of our nation's firefighters. Partnerships are vital. We depend on volunteers and career firefighters to make sure that we have success in responding and managing wildfires, and that we can credit that to our local, state, and federal partnerships. The Department of Public Safety and its Division of Fire Prevention Control have developed a strategy to be prepared year-round for wildfire activity and increasing impacts by shifting our resources to a year-round strategy that allows us to respond more effectively to the increasing wildfire challenges we face in Colorado. While Colorado may experience times of low fire occurrence, the overall long-term outlooks and trends require us to have robust preparedness, robust planning, and we must continue to evaluate ways to improve our preparedness and response capacity, our coordination, and our collaboration. The Department of Public Safety and its Division of Fire Prevention and Control will continue to provide technical support, tactical resources, and funding assistance for wildland fire response to counties and local fire agencies. But we can't do it without the support of our communities. We call upon those that live, work, and play in Colorado to help reduce the impact of fires by being vigilant, being preventative, respecting fire restrictions when they're in place, and doing your part to protect our property from wildland fire. Now I'd like to introduce Dan Gibbs, the Executive Director of the Department of Natural Resources.
Thanks, Dan. I'm really glad to be here at Fairmont Fire. I have a connection. One of my mentors for wildland firefighting. Mark Mullenix used to be a firefighter here who died in 2008, but he was always such a great champion for not only volunteer firefighters but career firefighters, and always thinking about like what we can do differently to improve firefighters in Colorado and throughout the country. Want to thank all the firefighters here. I understand that there's a Fairmont crew that's in Texas right now fighting a wildland fire, so I've personally seen you all out in action and really appreciate you covering your district, but also on a moment's notice go all around the country to help communities in need. I want to thank Stan. Thank you for your leadership, everything from fires and floods and challenges around the state. The Division of Public Safety, they've really a great national leader in thinking outside the box. And with the Centers of Excellence, with the Division of Fire Prevention Control, just amazing. And Governor, you're always pushing Stan and I and other department heads and cabinet level folks to really think differently, to really say how quick we can go, how we can do things differently, and how quickly we can act. And the fact you came up with this executive order in just 2 weeks is really amazing to see a challenge that you saw and then turning that challenge into action. So thank you so much. Let's give Governor Polis a round of applause for his amazing leadership. In Colorado, there are thousands across the state who donate their time and skill to serve as first responders and make their communities safer. However, we know these folks, the fact they're volunteers is really kind of misleading in many ways, right? Because the time that you all put in is really phenomenal. Like for here at this department, I believe you commit 36 hours a month, I believe. If you're involved with search and rescue, you're putting in weekend training time, and so it's a tremendous amount of time that folks across the state are really working hard to make a difference for their community. I've been fortunate over the last 15 years to serve as a wildland firefighter. Been really lucky that my employers have given me the flexibility to serve on crews to fight on fires around the country. I was very thankful, Governor, for you giving me the flexibility to go out and fight the Cameron Peak Fire and Grizzly Creek Fire in 2020. I could serve on the front lines protecting our natural resources and communities, knowing I had a job to return to. But for others, it's not the case. I know that state employees and others in the private sector who've also wanted to lend their skill to that challenging wildfire season, but were not able to do that because they weren't able to get time off. Now with this executive order, state employees will have 5 additional days to take time so Coloradans can serve as both first responders as well as their really important position in government. And hopefully will serve as an example for employers across the state to really look at this as a model to do the same. The unfortunate fact of the matter is we have a population growth. We have a wildfire season that's really all year round. We have warmer temperatures in the 1930s Dust Bowl, believe it or not, and more people outdoor recreating, which really leads to more challenges for firefighters, for search and rescue teams. They're going to be busier than ever, frankly, moving forward. So, Governor, I really want to thank you again for turning what you heard as a challenge just literally 2 weeks ago in EADS, turning those concerns into action. It's just really amazing to see how quickly you're able to act with that, and really appreciate your leadership on this. Next, I'd like to introduce Chief Fletcher. Chief Fletcher has been in the fire service for 44 years. I asked him, how's that possible? He said he started with Genesee Fire Protection District, a volunteer district, when he was 15 years old. So please welcome Chief Fletcher. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank Governor Polis, Director Hilke, and Director Gibbs for being here this morning. And really, I can't thank and recognize Governor Polis enough. I think this is really the beginning of something that should be able to take on and give us additional tools that volunteers across the state of Colorado can use to help with our retention, to help with their ability to maybe sign up and volunteer knowing that they actually can get some time off. And I really hope that others take this to heart and through their businesses allow the same opportunities for volunteers outside state employees. It really goes to the core of being a volunteer, core standing for commitment, opportunity, readiness, and experience. And Governor, we have plenty of applications still available if you'd like to consider being a volunteer here. I'm sure with the help of State Patrol, we probably, and the Division of Fire Prevention and Safety, we can get you to whatever incident you need to go to. So again, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
The reason there's so many pens is I think we're going to give you each a pen here. So my challenge is I have to use like one letter for each pen. Yeah, that way they're the official pens that we're using to sign them. You don't want just any old pen, you know? This is, I think, a record for things. Okay, there we go. It's official. We support our volunteer firefighters. You might not have quite enough. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And hopefully we'll get some state employees to join on the volunteer side now that they know that we got their back with this. So, thank you, sir. Thank you.